Welcome to our November 7th forum. My name's Paul Pierce, and I'm here with our guest speaker today, Lisa Scheps. And Lisa is a theater director. She's an actress and also a trans educator, and she's going to be educating us about some of the current issues in the trans life. And I think it's a really timely subject because Tuesday is election day. So I'm going to let Lisa take it from here. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for having me here. I have to say this is my first Friends meeting ever, so I'm very excited. So that's all real good. I like to keep things pretty informal. So when Paul told me about it, we'd take X amount of time as this and X amount of time as questions and answers. I would like to look on this as a conversation. So if something pops into your head that you want to talk about right now, stop me, I'll do it. I didn't pre-plan anything really, so we're going to be here just spitballing. Let me tell you a little bit about myself, because that's my favorite subject. I am a 64-year-old male to female trans woman. I am Jewish. I was a dog guardian, but I had to say goodbye to my dog, Sophie, a few months ago. I was brought up upper middle class. And obviously, I'm a white person. And so these are all the things that inform everything I do. I have a culinary degree. I'm a private pilot. I've jumped out of a perfectly good airplane. I've rock climbed. I've done bungee jumping. So I've done a lot of stuff. I don't believe there's a lot on my bucket list that I have yet to do. There is one thing, I'll just share this with you, it has nothing to do with anything. I've always wanted to go to sea, to work on a working sea vessel, but I think that those days are gone. So that's the one thing on my bucket list I don't think I'm going to get to do. Apropos of nothing, I did try to get, after I got my culinary degree, I became a merchant marine and tried to get a job on a ship cooking, but that did not happen. I have a very dear friend of mine, a trans woman named Sabrina Taraboletti, who is probably the most brave trans woman, or maybe even the most brave person I know. She is actually an engineer on a research vessel. So I just want to give you an idea of who I am. I am also a theater professional. I run a theater here in Austin, Texas called Ground Floor Theater that has a mission of producing works that focus on underrepresented communities. So we are what I like to call a do-gooder theater. We just had our Austin's versions of the Tonys, and we got a zillion awards because we're just that good. So I would encourage you to check us out. I am going to be talking about Ground Floor Theater a lot, and it is apropos of the trans and queer experience in that that's part of our focus. And I want to apologize if the word queer bothers anybody. I understand for some people it can be a little divisive, but I like to use queer instead of the alphabet soup that we use because I believe it's more inclusive. So I do apologize if you take offense to it. If it's something that you feel very strongly about, let me know and I'll go to LGBTQIA++. But I do kind of like the word queer. We know that this was a word that was used to hurt LGBTQ people, we've taken it back in a lot of ways, and even that taking back is kind of fraught in my mind, and my mind splits on whether you can actually take back a word that wasn't yours in the first place. But until we come up with another one, that's what we're gonna do. So I grew up for the first 40 years of my life. I was in the most protected class in this country. I was a white, upper middle class, heterosexual, cis male. I could not have told you how a bill became a law. I could not have told you who, I could always tell you who the president was, but I couldn't necessarily tell you who the vice president was, or certainly the secretary of state, or anybody else at a lower point in the hierarchy than that, because I didn't need to. I had so many people advocating for me that I did not care about how it happened. So I was ignorant to the process. I was also ignorant to the plight of so many people, simply because of being ignorant about it. It was not negligent or malicious. Thank you. Those of us that are of a certain age know that we just lose the simplest of words. I'm going to throw this away, put that down there because I keep playing with it. I transitioned from male to female when I was 40 years old, and right around the year 2000. I will say this, I have been trans 100% of my life, from the earliest thought that I can remember up until this very moment. So I had always, I'll give you a little bit of my backstory and my transition story. I could go on forever. I don't want to because I want to talk, like I said, like discussion. But so from my earliest memory, I always wanted to be a girl. It was very clear. Everybody knew I always wanted to be a girl. I was even able to dress as a ballerina on Halloween and things like that. I will say I grew up in Texas in a relatively conservative family. Somewhere around age 4, 5, 6, I got the message implicitly that Ricky wanting to be a girl was not a good thing and had to go away. And I shoved it in the back of my mind, and I played the game really, really well. I was a really good boy. I did a great job of playing the game of maleness. All through that time, I had what I thought was the compunction, the uncontrollable desire to cross-dress. I thought it was about the clothes. It was, as was taught to me in my youth, a loathsome thing to do. Therefore, I pretty much hated myself throughout the first 40 years of my life because I had this thing I couldn't control. Everything else was going gangbusters and wonderful. So, and I'm going to say about 1990, 1992, computers were starting to come around. I had a Commodore 64 computer, and I was a member of the community CompuServe. I'm saying all these things because I see people that may be my age and would understand these things. But they had these forums, and I stumbled across a cross-dressing forum. And I stayed up all night reading these posts because up until that moment, I thought I was all by myself. Does this sound familiar? Yeah. I thought I was all by myself. My trans role models at the time were Christine Jorgensen and Renee Richards, both of whom I did not relate with because I never felt like a woman trapped in a man's body. I just wanted to be female in my mind. So they weren't any, but that wasn't me. So and then all of a sudden I read all these people that had the exact same feelings as I did, or very close. And two things I learned from that night online. Most important, or actually they're both equally as important. One, I'm not alone. And as I learned later in life, I'm really not alone. Two, this does not go away. No matter what you try to do, it does not go away. Even if you want to take yourself to any kind of, whether try to change you. I tried hypnotism. I tried aversion therapy where I'd burn myself. I do everything I could do to try to make me not do this thing anymore I couldn't control. So I learned that doesn't go away. So I started to be honest and I started to explore my gender, which I had never done before. Because in my mind, if I started to explore my gender, I might discover I'm a gay person, and there could be nothing worse than that in my mind. So it all seems really silly now looking back on it. Flash forward, I spent a lot of time in therapy and discovered that I was not a cross-dresser. I was a transsexual. That is a person that's gender identity is different from the sex that they were assigned at birth. And I took steps to transition. I'm going to stop right here real quick and say, do people know the difference when I say gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, what those things are and how they're different? Okay, let me do that. I used to be, whenever I did these, I started with that, but now trans people and are out there, people have heard about it, so I don't want to be too elementary. So this is one of the things that I used to say. So when a person is born and they're in a hospital, a person, usually a male doctor, will look between their legs, look what's there, and make a decision about that person's sex. And they'll either see a little penis or a little vagina, or they'll see something else. Whatever that person says, they have two choices. Know what they are? Male, female, boy, girl. And they check a box.
Yep.
That is sex assigned at birth. Sex meaning the biological version. That has really nothing to do with gender.
Yep.
Then, as you grow up and you start to express yourself outwardly, or let's go back first and inwardly. So as you're growing up, you have an inward perception of yourself, of your gender on the male to female spectrum. And that is your gender identity. That's how you feel on the inside. Nobody sees that. That's all inside yourself. That's gender identity between male and female in that continuum. Then as you start to express yourself outwardly and wearing clothes and doing different things and doing what is stereotypically known as boy things and girl things, that becomes your gender expression. That is how you express yourself on the outside on a continuum between masculine and feminine. So you see the difference between masculine and feminine and male and female. So is football masculine or feminine?
Girls playing football.
Yeah, but generally speaking, what do we think?
Majority wise.
Masculine. Is it considered male or female? Is it considered male? Which male or female?
Masculine is male.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I'm glad you said that.
I
was going to say that.
So you're masculine and female, but is football considered a male sport or a female sport?
It's a female sport.
Football.
Oh, football, male.
Male sport.
Yeah, male.
Do women play football?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
Right. So a woman, a person that identifies as female can play a masculine sport.
Yep.
So when I first transitioned, I thought I was going to have to give up aviation and take up needlepoint. I truly did. Because aviation is typically masculine.
Yeah.
Needlepoint, obviously. So there are men doing needlepoint. There are lots of women in aviation. So it took a long time for me to discover that between male and female and masculine and feminine, we could be anywhere along that. So that's something that's really important. And then we have sexual orientation. That is who you love. And that person also has a gender identity and gender expression. So I will relate a story. At a point when I was working male, living female, I was dating a cis woman who identified as female. And when we were together in public and I was presenting male, we were a heterosexual couple. When we were in public and I was presenting female, we were a lesbian couple.
Yeah. Right.
So I just say that to say how fluid all this stuff is. And sexual orientation is completely different from gender identity.
Yeah.
Typically, if a person like me transitions from male to female, and I liked women previous to transition, chances are I'm going to like women after I transition. The transition really doesn't have anything to do with it. I will say there's some gray areas there in that transition gives yourself a lot of freedom to give up things that you may not have been aware of in the past. So again, all of that, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, all fluid. What's not fluid,
So I have a question.
I'm just finish one thought.
Yeah.
What's not fluid, and people argue with me on this, is sex assigned at birth, because that happened. Somebody did that.
Okay, about non-binary.
Yep. So, well, all right.
Let's
So,
talk about non-binary.
all right. So I've been speaking in a kind of gender binary situation.
Yeah.
So the gender binary is out the door right now. So we have, I identify as female. My sex assigned at birth was male. My gender identity, by the way, that stuff inside, is kind of right in the middle. My gender expression is female. Yeah, well, it's not fluid for me. It basically, but it's right around the middle.
The middle, okay.
My gender expression may be fluid. I might be ultra femme one day and a little bit more masculine another day. But again, that's kind of that is kind of flown in the center as well. But you have a lot more. Gender is a continuum along that line between male and female. I don't think there's anybody this is my opinion, that is all the way one side or the other. Even my very dear friend, let's just call him Victor, because that's his name, who I always thought as a Ken doll. He had a stereotypical view of maleness, and he portrayed that maleness. He's not on the end of that. He is like somewhere, he's probably on the more M side of it than the center, but he's definitely not at the very, very end. And I would challenge anybody that thought that they were 100% male, 100% female, in my opinion. So there are identities all across that binary. So, and terminology gets us in trouble more than anything else. Because it changes, and we can't. The trans community can't agree what the terms are. But right now, you'll hear trans and non-binary. Non-binary people typically don't believe in the binary. Don't believe that there's just two genders. And they don't necessarily identify as male or female, or they identify as male and female, or they could be anywhere along that continuum. I know so many people that identify as non-binary that are feminine presenting or masculine presenting. Yeah. That you would have a person that looks like a Harley driver with a big, huge beard and guns and all those things that you would like stereotypically assert as a male, and that person could identify themselves as non-binary. And the only way you would know that is if they share that with you. And so I appreciate and respect that of that person and their choice to consider themselves non-binary, no matter what their gender expression is. So as you can see, it's really complex. And then pronouns become even more daunting at that point, especially when someone is presenting like a binary, but don't feel like the binary. And the pronouns, and we've all been hearing a lot about pronouns lately in the news. I use, by the way, I should tell you, she, her pronouns. So the binary pronouns would be she, her, and he and his. And then most other people that don't identify on that binary will use they and them. It's been a long road to that. I personally like it versus what we had before. We had the most popular one prior to that was Z and here. So Z would be she or he, and here would be her, him. So you would say, what's your name?
Mary.
Mary, I'm going to pretend you're Z here. I could say, I saw Mary yesterday. Z was at the movies with her friend Frederica. And then
That's difficult.
it's difficult, but also I do like to, I used to suggest to people that they like live in that binary or live in those pronouns for a little while, because what it does make you do is make you think every time you want to use a pronoun. And we English speakers like pronouns. I love pronouns. So I will say this, and I know we want to talk about politics. We're going to get there. I will say this, as you go through life and you meet people that would like you to use a pronoun other than the pronoun your brain thinks they were to use, I'd ask you to do that, first of all. And second of all, give yourself some grace and slack if you screw up. Because you will. I do all the time.
Yeah.
Especially my non-binary friends that present feminine. I'm a boomer, and my mind goes to she, her when I see those people. And I misgender them all the time, and I'm in the
I do
community.
that too.
So give yourself some grace.
Yeah, right.
Let yourself
I do it
say,
too.
I'm sorry, and
Yeah.
move on. Don't
Right,
make it a big deal. And give yourself, because it's especially for those of us of a certain age, we've been doing things one way for a long time, and it's really hard to switch. So I will say that. Did that bring up any questions? Did that sort of give you, and all of you folks out in TV land too, if you have questions, anything at this point forward or this point back?
Yeah, one quick question. I recall you saying that you realized you were transsexual. Usually these days I hear transgender as opposed to transsexual. Is there a difference between those?
Yeah, like I said, terms always are changing. For the bulk of my time when I was in heavy duty trans activism, transgender was meant to be an umbrella term that covers anybody that defies what is stereotypically known as male or female. That's not so much the case anymore. Transgender is really more like, I wouldn't say it's synonymous to transsexual, but it is pretty darn close to. Where are we in cussing in this room? Did we not do it?
We've all done it.
I'm okay.
Okay. I'm just afraid I've been editing myself, and I'm trying to be respectful of the room we're in, but
There aren't any children.
I'm afraid something might come out.
The children are not here.
Okay, good.
The answer is we don't do that shit.
Gotcha. So trans has become more similar to transsexual, meaning my gender identity, that thing inside, is different from the sex assigned at birth. Transgender. Trans has become that umbrella term that means everybody. But as you go through life and as these terms appear in your day-to-day life, just know that they are fluid and they change with the wind. And even folks in the community can't really agree what is what. So I've had severe disagreements with people, but I do have to respect that it's all a moving target. It's interesting about terms because cisgender, there was years we didn't know. Does everybody know? Anybody not know what cisgender means? Everybody knows. So that's a brand new word. But there were years that we were trying to find what it is, what do we call a person that their gender expression and gender identity matches the sex they were assigned at birth. Can never figure it out. When I first transitioned, and to me, it was all, I'm male to female, and that's the only world I lived in. So we said GGs, genuine girls. Then we switched to biological, male or female. And then a lot of people said, well, wait a second, I'm biological. Why am I not? So then we switched to natal, male or female. And then everybody said, well, natal, I was trans in the womb. So it took a long time. And then somebody came up with cisgender. And I think it's brilliant. It's, does anybody know where cis came from?
Chemistry.
Chemistry. And it is when a compound changes from one thing to another. A trans fat is not a cis fat. And that's where trans came from. And the thing about terminology that I've learned through this whole experience,
I thought it was an acronym.
heterosexual wasn't a word until homosexual was.
Yeah, right.
Cisgender wasn't a word until transgender was. It's really fascinating to see where these things go. I mean, I'd be interested. I have not done the research on this, so people smarter than me probably have. It'd be interesting to see when the term heterosexual and homosexual got coined, because from my very painstakingly research on Wikipedia, homosexual was first, heterosexual came second, because back in the day, everybody was heterosexual. So that's a scoop. Yes.
I think that's where all the legislation gets really screwed up, is because all of the language and descriptors and things that they're trying to control, the words are too fluid for legislation.
Yes and no. I mean, the words in legislations aren't. So the words that happen in legislation around non-discrimination are gender identity and expression. That's
Non-discrimination.
right. What you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the rhetoric around all these laws. And that is indeed, and let's just jump right into that right now. I will say that my world, I became an activist after I transitioned, because I went from the most protected class in society to one of the more disenfranchised classes. And I was just shocked to find out what rights I lost simply by living my truth. So I became, and I'm relatively articulate, I'm very gregarious, so it became important to me to speak for others that don't. Many people in my demographic sort of escaped into solitude. They became computer programmers, or they turned into hypermasculine fields where they're like this. My way of escaping and keeping people at bay was to be gregarious. The more I pushed myself out there, the less people asked about me. So I used that tool to try to change hearts and minds. I truly figured out that if I could just meet everybody in the world and have a conversation with everybody in the world, they're going to see that trans people are not this scary, frightening thing that they've been led to believe we are. That the next time they're in a group where somebody says something derogatory about a gender diverse person, they'll say, hey, wait a minute, I met Lisa a week ago and she's kind of okay. She's sort of funny, actually. And believe me, I know that looks aren't everything, but she's funny. That's really, really important. When I first started doing this work, people didn't know trans people. They didn't know what a trans person was. And now when I go into a room and I used to say, how many people's ever heard the word transgender? I would maybe get one hand, if that many. Now all hands go up. So these things are really good things. The trans community in our political fight, we were linked with the gay and lesbian community, not from things that we do. There was when I first got to be active, there was a big controversy about whether the T should be part of GLB. And I was one of the people that at first said, no, we should be our own thing. We keep telling people that sexual orientation and gender identity are different. Why shouldn't we be our own thing? But it was explained to me that the world thinks we're attached, so we may as well capitalize on that and try to get people to understand that.
And they're all marginalized communities.
But we know that there are a lot of marginalized communities in the world that are out there. And one of the things and this was just a quick tangent, it's frustrating for me as an activist and as I'm a pretty lefty progressive person, that when a disenfranchised group gets their rights, they like to pull up the ladder and say nobody else is allowed on the ship, right? We see that. The Irish were not considered white back in the day. Now they're considered very white, but they pulled up the ladder. There's no more room for anybody else in here. And that just drives me crazy, because there's room for everybody to be treated with dignity and respect. I don't get that, but so I'm very active in the LGBTQ movement to get non-discrimination passed in the legislation. There was I don't know what it's called now, I keep forgetting, but it was the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, ENDA, that had been introduced every year since the 70s that still hasn't been codified into law.
Is that federal or state?
That's federal. There was also a state ENDA, and our state never had a chance of even a look. I will say this, that I became active in Austin when I moved to Austin in 2002. I had no intention on being active in the trans community or politically. I just sort of wanted to live my life. I received a phone call like 2 weeks after I got here saying that Austin is trying to add gender identity to the Human Rights Ordinance. And they've hit a roadblock. Will you mind coming to a meeting of a group of people? And I did. And that became, we passed gender identity in the Human Rights Ordinance. We were a group called ATGOI, the Austin Transgender Ordinance Initiative. I know, that's a mouthful. After that, we wanted to stay working because it was just too important. We changed our name to TACT, Transgender Advocates of Central Texas. And then I wanted to be more statewide because we didn't have a state voice. And who's here has heard of Transgender Education Network of Texas? Couple of people. So we changed our name to TENT, and we became statewide, and TENT is like thriving right now. I'm a ex officio board member. I'm not really involved on a day-to-day. But that's adding language so that people cannot be discriminated against in employment, public accommodation and housing on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Which still is not a protected class in the state of Texas or in the federal government. You can be denied employment because you're gay. You can be denied employment because you identify different from the sex you were assigned at birth. These are still on the books and still can happen. Texas, as everybody here probably knows, is a right to work state. So you can be fired for any reason at all as long as it's not a federal or state protected class. You know, the ADA was just passed in the 90s, I think. I may be wrong about that. But you could have been fired because you're in a wheelchair before that. I mean, that's unconscionable. And speaking of the ADA, when they passed the ADA, and I forgot the gentleman's name that ran it, they were also fighting, part of the ADA was HIV status. And the powers that be in the legislature said, we know we can get this passed if you let go of HIV. And the guy that ran that said, oh God, I forgot the quote. Basically, he said, no. We stand with this. We will not let that go away. And so consequently, HIV status is a protected class now. So that's all still going on. Trans people were still very invisible. And that was not by design, but it was the legislature, and one side in particular, tends to use fear-mongering around cultural issues as a way to get people into the ballot box. So immigration, crime, gay marriage, all these things were used to get people riled up because people feel very strongly about these things for a myriad of reasons, but oftentimes it's because that's what they were taught that God wants. Don't understand that, especially if you read the Bible, which I haven't all that much, to be honest. But I, you know, when you hear about what Jesus was as a person, he certainly wouldn't, I don't think, agree with the fear-mongering that goes around. I mean, he was out there with the disenfranchised and with the disabled, helping them. So that seems crazy. So The gay population was a big target. And gay marriage was a big target. Gay marriage, same-sex marriage happened so much faster than we had ever expected it to be, those of us in the movement. And when gay marriage passed, and hopefully it will stay the law of the land, then suddenly the wind went out of the sails of those people trying to create fear about the gay agenda. Because it was now the law of the land. Suddenly, like overnight, people could say, oh, I see how you have a right to love who you would like to love and have the same rights, privileges, and responsibilities as I, as a heterosexual person, have. It like the feelings of the country changed, that hearts and minds changed almost immediately. Bless you. So this is my opinion, and only my opinion. It seemed to me that those people that needed to use that fear as a wedge or for whatever reason needed a new person to point to. And that became trans. So here in the state of Texas, before marriage equality, we had the bathroom bill. We had all these things that were fear-mongering around trans people and how much we want to prey on young girls in the bathroom because, that's what I do. So thankfully, that never made itself into law in this state. But once we couldn't target gay people and lesbian people, we needed a new target. So here's trans. We already had this started. North Carolina passed a bathroom bill prior to gay marriage. It was there. It was in the working. The world has been changing. Corporations, sports organizations, and everything are recognizing that gender identity and expression need to be protected, that trans people exist, and that trans boys and trans girls want to compete in sports. They want to have a job. They want to raise a family. They want to pay taxes. They want to go to war. Or they want to serve their country. Excuse me, that was a poor choice of words. But I'm sure some of them do. So trans people became a target, and we became very visible overnight, and it's very scary. But I will say this, and I may be one of the few people that say this, it's also good at the same time, because, and I forgot who said it, it was attributed to Gandhi, but it wasn't actually him. And God love him, Trump used this quote once, pissed me off. But it's the quote where first they ignore us, then they ridicule us, then they fight us, then we win. And that's pretty much how it's gone for a struggle for independence, for a struggle for rights, whatever. Trans people are now, they are fighting us. And the next step is we win. So I do think it's going to be good overall, but it is scary. We have become a target. To many people, we are a target that we're certain it's okay to hate us. It's absolutely okay to ostracize us. In many cases, it's okay to physically harm us. Many people feel that way. It's a scary place to be. What's more, the laws, and I want to make this a conversation. So we all know I'm assuming we have an idea or we know what's going on in this state and other states, in that it has become a crime to. Are we running out? Am I going?
We got about like 9 minutes.
Oh my God! Let's just.
It's important. 9 minutes.
I just talk so much. You can be arrested, you can be fined, you can make money if you turn in someone that is giving gender affirming care to children.
Child abuse.
Child abuse. And let me say this unequivocally, and I just heard this on the TV yesterday. Okay. Nobody is giving gender affirming surgeries to children. It just is not happening anywhere. No response. There's the AMA and all all the people that are giving care that are regulatory are regulating this and have looked at it and said, all these things are not only the right thing to do, but they're helping these children. Their grade scores are better, their social skills are better, everything when they're allowed to live their truth. And nobody is doing anything irreversible to anybody that's a child. And certainly there are some through parents, caregivers, and doctors, like 16 to 18, that there might be some stuff happening medically, but nothing before that. And hormone blockers are reversible. You can take a hormone blocker, and when you stop taking that hormone blocker, you go through puberty. So I want to just state that unequivocally. That's the story. So let's just talk. Questions? Comments?
I have a comment.
Okay.
And kind of a question, more of a comment. There actually are children who are born with, what's the word? Ambiguous
Genitalia.
They need surgery
Well,
sometimes.
No.
Sometimes. So.
No.
Okay,
They don't
fine.
need surgery. They are given surgery without informed consent. So those children, these are intersex people that are born with ambiguous genitalia, which could be, by the way, a urethra that is a few millimeters off the standard, or an enlarged clitoris. These children in the past have been given surgery, basically gender reassignment surgery, against their will, against their consent. So what they're saying now is to wait till these children are old enough to make up their own minds about whether they need to give consent to have genital surgery. None of these.
That's the I in the alphabet.
Correct. I say none. Most of these infants that are born with ambiguous genitalia, these are not life-threatening or medically threatening consent issues. So the best thing to do is to wait and let that child have a say in their own care.
The bathroom bills, as they're called, they're really targeting school children, aren't they? Because who's going to ask for your birth certificate when you're using the public restrooms?
They did specifically target schools, and they're not going to ask for birth certificates. Their idea is the actual genitalia checks, like pull down your pants and let's look. And it's crazy that would even be an issue. But yeah, they did target children in the last bathroom bill. There hasn't been a bathroom bill in Texas in a while. I'm pretty sure we might see something like that in 2023 coming up. It depends on who it is. And thankfully, we've had a speaker in the House that has understood that even though that they are Republican and they are conservative, they didn't see that as an issue that really has any merit getting on the floor.
Sports things.
And now we have the sports things, and that's a harder nut to follow, to deal with. When a person takes a hormone of the sex that they were not assigned at birth, their musculature changes. I'm not nearly as strong as I used to be. I'm pretty strong, but the whole idea, and we're talking about the numbers of trans children that want to do sports is like 0.00000 something. So we're not talking about a lot of people, but it's a very scary idea. And they're really only targeting girls. So people like me going into girl sports. They don't care about the other way around. Yeah. But there are so many different variations in muscle tone, in DNA. I mean, everything is all the difference. And then everything that is an accident of birth, if you will, I don't know if that's a good choice of words, but someone who is, 6'6", and strong and goodwill is going to be good at basketball. You're not trying to say that, we can't have anybody that's over 6 feet tall or tries to make themselves taller or whatever. So we all do, and we work out to make ourselves stronger. So there's a lot of things that this is kind of silly. I firmly believe that this is all about frightening people. I believe that you will stop hearing about this stuff in, 2025, after the presidential election. It will fade into oblivion for a while. Because it's really about getting people to vote for things that you want. Like, I want to protect my money, and I don't want to be taxed as much. I don't want to have to give my money to people less fortunate than me, because screw them. That I know that they don't think that, but some do. But the whole attack on trans people is taken at an emotional level, I think. And kids are really good fodder, and unfortunately good fodder, because the book situation with kids, everything, is just unfortunate that they have to be used.
I have a question. So the trans created the right, because I'm gay, they created the right in 1969, Stonewall. And they also, before that, in 1968, in San Francisco, did the Stonewall Cafe. My question is, you're an activist for trans. Do you think that the way we're going to win this fight as a community for the trans is to you feel more in the right side of it, like go out rioting again, like they did in 1969, or do you think that we can win it politically?
I think it's got to be both.
It's got to be. That's what I'm thinking too.
I think it's really, really important. And actually, that's a really good point. Just
because I wanted to see, what you thought about those. Yeah.
In the struggle, you have people that are trying to work within the system to get things changed legislatively, and things like that, and thinking things through and arguing points and things like that. Then you have these group of people that want to chain themselves to trees or do
Glue themselves to a portrait.
Yeah, throw mayonnaise at the Mona Lisa. Those activists as well. I think it's important that both of those people exist.
Because I was the right on the nation's capital in our last administration. Mm-hmm. It's like you said, it scared a bunch of people. It's scared the people completely out from the whole Trump administration. And that riot, which is like, it reminded me when I saw the nation's capital. I remember the Stonewall riot. I mean, I was like -1, but I'm literally like, I've been an AIDS activist all my life. I have been an actual trans activist, and every part of the rainbow, like you said, we're in the I's, the A's, the plus, the L's, the G, the P, the T. So I like that you say queer, because it gets to even me, it's confusing, because it's confusing to say what people identify as. Yeah. But I agree. The riot is literally the riot was very good in 1969. Because it was people that are hiding. Yeah. I won't say hiding. The people that are fearful. So
well, and Stonewall.
And politically.
Yeah, Stonewall was it was illegal.
Yeah, it was illegal. Yes.
Wear clothes of the opposite gender. Yeah. And Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson. These were they were called drag queens at the time. I would consider them more trans activists.
I actually had the opportunity to meet both of them.
Oh, awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah,
they were the first ones to fight.
And Harvey Milk,
one more question.
We've got just 2 minutes. We're really close to the end of time. But I wanted you to address very briefly how theater activism can help.
Oh God, thank you so much.
Yes. Theater.
So I'll throw this out. Again, it's all about that same thing as if they meet me. In theater, we shine a light on the community. Ground Floor Theater, groundfloortheater.org, has a mission of working with that. So we're always trying to shine a light on the community. I would suggest if you go to groundfloortheater.org, or if you go to YouTube, our YouTube channel, Ground Floor Theater, I did a project during the pandemic called Trans Voices, Trans Lives, Trans Voices, where we heard from trans people in their own words. I was one of those people. And all of those videos are available for free on YouTube. And you can see how we used theater and art to inform people. So that's all out there. And a lot of companies are doing the same thing. I would say if you want to help the fight, go to transtexas.org. That's Tent's website. Give them money, give them support, give them whatever you can. Join them in their legislation lobby days next month, whatever you can do. Nationally speaking, the National Center for Transgender Equality, which is transequality.org, or the Human Rights Campaign, Equality Texas. I'll Go here in Austin is an amazing group doing work. So all of those groups are working really hard for queer rights. I'll Go, I will say, is specifically queer people of color, and they're doing, and they've been around for a long time. They're an amazing group of people. I'm going to do one real quick commercial. Ground Floor Theater is doing a musical on December 2nd called The Last 5 Years. We're doing this in English and American Sign Language. We're doing it as part in conjunction with Deaf Austin Theater, which is the community we're serving here. It's amazing. This is going to be our second play that we've done it this way. And we start rehearsal tomorrow.
Are you going to be performing at the Texas School for the Deaf?
We'll be performing at Ground Floor Theater, but Brian Cheslick, my co-director, used to teach at Texas School for the Deaf, and they are helping us. We have the second largest deaf community in the city in the United States, so this will be an enjoyable show for all.
Thank you.
This
Thank
has
you.
been so exciting. This is applause.
This is how you do it, Dad. I love you, and this is Turtle.
Yes. And this is Breakers.
I have never seen it going around, but I've always seen.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Because it's a group.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.